All right, guys, in today's video, we're going to be working on a Chevrolet Cruze, a 2012, with the 1.4-liter Ecotec turbocharged engine. And the owner's been saying the check engine light's been coming on and going off and coming on and going off. And we hooked it up to GDS2 with our MDI, and we're not showing any current codes. But there is a history code of a P0171. So rather than try to diag anything with GDS2 because the code's currently not manifesting, this engine has some very common root causes for that code. And so what we're going to do is just go straight under the hood and see if we can eliminate those common problems, to see if we get lucky. All right, guys, let's put some light on here. Now, to start debugging this code, this P0171, particularly when it's intermittent, like on this vehicle, we're going to start with some simple tests that I'm going to show you. And if those tests don't pan out, then we'll go to more common tests like looking for air intake leaks or looking for vacuum leaks in the ductwork around the intake manifold. But on this particular engine, this 1.4-liter turbocharged Ecotec engine, we're going to start with this. And now this one here has got the dipstick here and the filler tube here. So this video applies to what would be called an RPO LUV or an LUJ version of this engine. We're going to remove this sight cover first. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4 snap tabs here, 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 and here. And the reason we're going to do that is we can short circuit this process, and I'll show you some service bulletins after we do this that are a common failure point. The PCV, the positive crankcase ventilation design on this particular engine is rather unique. You've got this pipe that runs from the intake manifold all the way down to the turbocharger unit. This is the PCV bypass pipe. It has one-way valves at the ends. Underneath this pipe is a bypass valve that's part of the intake manifold. That's going to be our second check. But as part of the valve cover, we've got this PCV orifice port right here. If you zoom in, you can see there's a little hole here. And underneath this is a diaphragm. And what we're looking for in this first test, we don't see the first part of the test, which would be oil coming out of this, so we don't have that problem. I'm going to have to start the engine for the second test. We're going to be looking for a vacuum leak. And not a vacuum leak on the outgoing, but vacuum coming in. We should not have any vacuum at this port. And if we do, then we're going to go on to the next test. So that's the first thing we're going to check here. Now, how do you do this test? Well, you got to have the engine running, but you can put your finger up here, or you can get a little piece of paper. I'm going to probably do both because I don't know how bad this is going to be, if it's going to be enough, if you can hear it. Sometimes if it's really loud, you can hear like a whistling noise if you put your finger up there, but if not, we'll do the paper test. Let me go start the engine, and we will go do that test while the engine's running. All right, with the engine running, zoom into this port. I can feel like a slight vacuum. Let me take a piece of paper so we can already hear the sound when we put our finger over there, but we can just take a piece of paper. This is just a Post-it note cut in half, and we're going to see if that stays put, and it does. So that tells us we've got vacuum coming in here. So that orifice, this diaphragm for this orifice, is definitely damaged. So let me shut the engine off. All right, so we know the orifice is damaged. Most people would then jump to, okay, well, let's replace the valve cover. That's not what you're going to do yet, because now we got to figure out why is this damaged. So that's the next test we're going to move to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this pipe from this intake manifold, and we're going to do an inspection for the bypass valve. So let me grab a tool we can use to free up these little clips here. So we got a little retaining clip here, and we got this guy right here that we're just going to kind of coax apart, just like that. Now this pipe, let me tell you something about this pipe. The plastic on this pipe is super, super brittle. So you want to be super gentle with this guy. So I'm just trying to get him out of here and close this clip so he'll sit like this. This one he's not going to come out of until we actually remove it here. Now if we zoom in a little bit more, there's a metal retaining clamp here. We're going to pry that off. And normally you're supposed to just be able to leave it like that, but sometimes it can grab if there's any wear inside, and you can go ahead and pull it off the rest of the way, but I'm going to try to leave it like that. And then I'm going to grab a plastic tool that I can pry with here. I'm going to see if I can do it from this angle. I normally like to do it from the other angle, from the opposite side. So I'm just going to give it a little twist. Try to free it up. And again, I'm trying to be super gentle not to break this pipe, because this is just a diag we're trying to do. We're not trying to add to our repair bill. And now I'm going to try to lift up with my finger here. Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this metal retainer the rest of the way off. Right there. I'm just going to sit it right up here on the window for a second. There we go. Now it's off. And so what I'm going to want to do is look down inside this pipe. Now I'm going to put a camera down there for you guys. But I'm trying to see if this bypass valve is still there. So let me grab a camera. Just right over here, and we will both look live together at the state of this valve. All right. So coming down in here, you see that little orange piece right there? That tells us that the bypass valve is still in place. Let's see if we can get a side view of that. Right there. I was hoping we'd get a side view of that with this. Maybe we've got some crud on our camera. But that tells us that this is okay. It's not missing. It's in place. It may be dirty. So one of the things I might decide to do here is clean this. Now normally this valve's missing is a good indicator of why the PCV orifice diaphragm is damaged up here. But this is not. So we still got to figure out what caused this to be damaged. It's not this. So now we're going to move on to the next test. Let me get this out of the way. I'm going to go in here and clean this. I'll show you it looks like cleaned up, and then we'll go do the next test. All right, guys, I went to clean inside the air intake. This is the particular product I would use for something like that from CRC. There might be other brands, but this is the one I like. And we're trying to get everything clean in there, so you can see from these Q-tips that there was a lot of crud. But I started to notice as I got to smaller ones and trying to clean around our little nub, if we zoom in on this guy, you know, this orange discoloration is coming off that nub that we saw. And so that means that the silicone that bypass valve is made of, it's gotten very aged because it's starting to shed the surface. So let's go back to the camera, cleaned up the side camera so we can actually use it here. Let's get our overhead light back on. And so when we look at this guy, right, we can see our outer nub is very clean, but I'm not seeing any orange through any of these ports that I've wiped off, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 still kind of dirty on the side. 7 is kind of plugged up with dirt. I still got to clean a couple of these, but I don't think I'm going to bother, because if I don't see that orange, that means that the flapper valve for this bypass is probably broken off, and the only thing left in the intake is this nub. So this is probably a good segue to take a look at some of the service manual information and service bulletins so you can understand what am I seeing here and why am I telling you it's bad. So let's go take a look at some of that service info. All right, so like I said in the beginning of the video, this particular engine's got some quirks, and there are several service bulletins out. This one we're looking at here, P0171 DTC. This is some preliminary information. It came out in 2019, covering up through updating the model years to 2019. This is actually going to cover up through the video title in terms of years, probably 2021 on certain models with this particular engine. And we've already looked at this PCV orifice port, and we've already determined that it's leaking vacuum, so that we know that the diaphragm under here is shot. And so the only thing you can do to repair something like that is replace the camshaft cover. So we already know that. We were about to go do some of these other tests that they talk about doing, which is measuring vacuum off the dipstick port, right? They're just talking about putting an adapter on a pressure gauge. But when we were doing this cleaning, we skipped this because that was the next thing they were going to have us do, which we already did, removing this PCV pipe, right, so that we could get access to see this little nub. And then what you want to see with a side view camera is all this orange through those holes, right? And so all we're seeing is that nub in the middle. We're not seeing any orange at all. Now, is it possible it's all black and cruddy? Yeah, maybe. But we should see something out of one of them, and we don't see anything out of any of them. And so what I think is going on here is this nub might be the only thing left of this valve, and it has broken off on the other side. And that is what created the pressure differential that blew the diaphragm in the PCV orifice. They talk about this kind of problem in some other bulletins where you end up with having leaks, right? Because when you get this pressure differential, it'll start blowing the seals on the engine. The front crankshaft seal, the rear crankshaft seal, the camshaft cover seal, even the oil pan seal can end up going when this problem occurs. And so they tell you to do the same kind of test, right? To go in here and look for this nub. Just checking for this nub, though, may not be enough. That's why I like this other bulletin showing us that picture of what we should see from the side view. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's involved in this repair, because what we know at a minimum we're going to have to replace the camshaft cover, but I think we're going to end up having to replace the intake manifold as well. I'll break this into two videos. We'll cover the intake manifold here, and then we'll cover the camshaft cover separately, because you don't always have to replace both, but in this case I think that's what we're going to have to do. At a minimum, we're going to have to remove this intake manifold to better inspect and clean that diaphragm of that bypass valve. This is just a view of what's involved with the camshaft cover. So you're going to end up removing the coils, the ignition coil here, and we already removed that sight cover, and then there's just a series of bolts around here. Depending on the last time this gasket was replaced, it could be a real bear to get off, but since you're replacing it, you can be a little bit more aggressive in prying it off, and then it just gets replaced as a unit with both the cover and the gasket, and you torque it back down and you're done. The intake manifold's a little bit more involved. It's got some gaskets also, and you'll have to transfer over some things like the evap solenoid valve and the sensor here. Typically this vacuum line here and this vacuum line here and this sensor are going to be included with the new unit. The gaskets for the engine cylinder head and for the throttle body should also be included with the new unit. But all of that piping that we see kind of pulled up here and the fuel injection rail that we see over here, all that's going to have to be pulled off and transferred to the new unit. So this one's going to take some time, but we're going to go ahead and get started on this now. We'll go ahead and take a look at the service manual procedure for removing this, and then we'll go ahead and get started with doing it. All right, for this engine, I'm going to use the 2012 service manual, but the procedure is going to be nearly identical for all the different vehicles that use this particular engine. The most that's going to vary are some of the ductwork and the vacuum lines. All right, so intake manifold replacement. We're going to disconnect the negative battery cable. We've already removed the engine sight shield. That's that decorative cover that was blocking access to that PCV port, right? So we've already got that off. They're going to tell you to unclip the heater hose from the retaining clips here, and the control module wiring harness here and here. So this is just freeing stuff up. Remove the charge air cooler air hose from the throttle body, and then disconnect the throttle body wiring harness, and then disconnect the emission canister purge solenoid valve wiring harness. This guy over here. And then they want you to take note of where the map sensor wiring harness plugs in, so that when you disconnect that, you put it back where it came from. So pull those two from here and here. Not all engines have both of these. In fact, the one we have here has just got position 2. Disconnect the 4 injector wiring harness plugs, which are 1, 2, 3, and 4. unclip the engine control module wiring harness from the camshaft cover. Disconnect the turbocharger wastegate regulator solenoid valve harness, plug number 3. I'm going to show you all of this. Unclip the engine control module wiring harness from the intake manifold retainer clips to here and here. And then, let's see, they're going to tell you, okay, there's a little warning about gasoline. We're going to pop this cover, and we're going to release the fuel pressure out of the fuel rail. So they're just showing you how you'd use a pressure gauge to let that fuel pressure out. You can either use the fancy tool they have or whatever you've got. I'm going to show you an OTC fuel pressure gauge. We're going to disconnect the fuel feed pipe from the fuel rail. There's also a retaining clamp. I'll show you that too. And disconnect the PCV pipe from the intake manifold. We've already done that because we did our inspection for the bypass valve that led us to this repair. So that's earlier in the video that you're already watching. Disconnect the fuel vent pipe from the purge solenoid valve and unclip the ventilation pipe from the retainer clip. I'll show you all of that too. Disconnect the brake booster vacuum pipe from the intake manifold, this guy here, and then pull the bolts. So we're going to remove all 6 of these bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that should get us to let go of this. Now, it's not that easy, I'll tell you right now, because they don't talk about it, but there's a couple of connections underneath. There's some harnesses that are going to be plugged in the back that we're going to have to pull those Christmas tree connectors out to let this go. And I think there's at least one vacuum line on the bottom that they're not showing. They're reminding you that you can't reuse the gaskets. You got to toss them. And they're telling you that you're going to need to take parts that we left on here, like the fuel rail, and move it over to the new replacement one. Now, so we're going to remove this and inspect it first, because maybe we just need to do a deeper cleaning and we don't have to replace it, or maybe we do have to replace it. But either way, we got to put new gaskets on there. And then we'll come back and I'll take you through the install procedure. So let's go ahead and get started on it. All right, guys, so since we're going to be working around fuel and electrical connectors, we're going to take a 10 millimeter and we're going to remove the negative terminal on the battery to de-energize everything, just a safety precaution. All right, so I'm going to start on the right-hand side, driver's side. I'm going to work my way over to the passenger side. I'm not going to follow the service manual religiously, guys. It's kind of like a guide for me. But as we go, you'll see where it ties out. So the first thing I'm going to do, we're going to take this electrical connector here because we're going to pull this charge air pipe. So I'm just going to push down on this guy, get that off, get him tucked out of the way. The next thing I'm going to do is this connector here. It's got a little retaining clip on it. We're going to need to get that pulled back like so. And then with that pulled back, let me see how I can get my finger in here. I'm going to have to block your view for a minute. Just going to give this guy a push as well. And he should slide off. Right, like that. Next thing we're going to do, I'll kind of push him up here as well. I'm going to go after this band clamp here. Loosen this up till it moves. And then we're going to try to get this charge air cooler pipe to let go of the throttle body. And if you have trouble like I'm having it here, then we'll make it a little looser. Come on, baby, let go. It should be loose enough, but maybe not. It's always something, guys. Let me kind of move the camera over here to the left a little bit so I can get some more leverage on this. There we go. Just got to pull it straight back rather than from an angle. So this is rigid plastic. It's not very flexible. So we're going to kind of push it down here a little bit. We're not really going to be able to lift it up and out of the way because we could crack it and introduce yet another source for this code we're chasing. All right. This guy we're going to leave alone because this stays on here and this stays on there. When I get to the other side, we're going to pull this pipe and we're going to pull this connector. This will stay on the assembly until we get it out, and then we'll transfer it to the new one. Remember, we already removed this in the beginning. So the next thing I want to do is I want to get this vacuum line coming from over in the power brake side. Look down here, there's like a little guy right there in the front that we're going to give a pinch with our fingernail, and that's going to let us pull this off right there. Just going to push your finger in there, and that's going to cause this to let go. All right, so I'm going to set that guy back there. Now the next thing is I'm going to go ahead and take this cap off. It's going to give us access to the fuel rail. And then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to have to stop the camera for a second. I'm going to go over here and get a fuel pressure gauge so we can release the pressure. All right, so to get that fuel pressure released, we're just going to use a fuel pressure gauge that has a pressure release option on the side of it. All right, so I'm just going to take this adapter off because for this particular vehicle, we want the larger size. If you have one of these OTCs, make sure the nipple is sitting inside there. That little guy has a tendency to fall out on this model. So we're just going to go over and attach this. I'm going to run this drain line off camera to a catch pan. All right, and then we're going to come over here and get this guy attached. Now I got some rags here because you saw as I first started to put it on, a little bit of fuel came out. And that's exactly why these rags are here. And whatever residual pressure might still be there, probably most of it came out when we pushed it down, but I'll be able to use this fuel pressure gauge to let that out. So at that point we should be done, and this is all de-energized. And we can continue on with disassembly. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to get this harness out of the way. So it's kind of pushed in here, 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 and here. So just going to nudge it out of where it's pushed in, here and here. All right, so that's now on the back here. You can see there's two metal clips built onto the fuel rail that it sits into, here and here. Gonna wedge it out of there as well. And there's a lot of pressure on this one, so let me kind of take this long screwdriver that we're going to use to get the wiring harness clips off the fuel injectors off. We'll use that to kind of nudge it along here. Come on, baby. All right, so we got that out of the way. Now, here's our fuel injection connector. Fuel injector connectors. And we got to get the camera to come up from the very top here. We'll do this one because it's probably easier to film. And let's see if we can get this flashlight over here for you guys. Come on. It's going to be a challenge to find something magnetic. Everything's either aluminum or plastic on this particular engine. All right, let's just try to sit it like this. How about that? All right. So if we come straight down on this injector, you can see from the top here, there's a little metal bar that I'm pushing in with the screwdriver. See that guy right there? So we've got to push this in all the way, and then we can wiggle that off. So that's how that works. So I'm going to grab this one here, do the same thing. I'm going to grab this one on the end, do the same thing. Just going to push that bar in, and then pull that one off. And then we got one more over here. Push the bar in and pull the connector straight up. All right, so now we've gotten the harness disconnected, and we've gotten the connections to the fuel injectors themselves disconnected. Now we pulled this hose. We still need to unhook the fuel line from what we depressurized earlier. So let me see what we can disconnect on this side over here. So I'm going to kind of shift over to the passenger side a little bit. See if I can find another place to rest our flashlight. So now we've got these two connections. So let's push this kind of locking retainer open. So you can see like that guy right there, kind of lift up on it, push it down. And that should let us pull this hose off. Get it all the way open. And that will come off there. Come on. And it's got a little retainer in the back here. And that's one of these kind of deals where you got like a butterfly, right? So you got to get both ends of it out of the way in order to get the hose out of it. Come on. We don't want to have happen what just almost happened there. It will break if you don't get these things pushed down like that. All right. Now we can pull this off. Now we've got an electrical connector. It looks like it's just a type that will give a push on. I'm not sure. Might have to get a mirror back here. Yeah, let me get a mirror because I cannot feel the release tab. But that grab a mirror, we'll take that off. And at this point, we're done on the top over to here, right? Because this is all disconnected. It's kind of wedged in here, but it's out of the way. We're going to go ahead and grab this airflow sensor right here. Going to push down, or actually push up. That one's off. So the deal with this guy is you kind of push up and then push him back. So the only thing we've got left on this side is this electrical connector, and we've got the fuel line. This is disconnected. In fact, from earlier when we took off this little metal guy, I'm just going to put that back on there so we don't forget. Let me go get a mirror and we'll pull this. All right, so if we zoom in here, what we can see on the back side of this guy right there, that's the tab we want. Let me see if I can do this without blocking your view. I'm just going to lift up on that tab, and that should allow us to pull this guy off like that. All right, so now we've got all this disconnected. So like I said, we'll leave this attached, and we'll transfer it if we end up replacing it. All right, and also before I forget here, along with putting this little metal retainer on, we're going to put this dust cap back on the fuel line, fuel rail pressure release valve. And then, since we got the mirror out already, so the next thing I'll show you is, so we've got this coolant hose here, and this is part of the heater assembly. And if we follow this guy around, this is part of the things I told you the service manual is not going to show. See that big black band clamp? We're going to have to take that off as we pull the intake out. Really can't get to it until we loosen it up, but that's one of the things we're going to have to come back and get. The next thing we're going to go do is on this side over here, there's some somewhat easy stuff. So here you can see with this hose, this wiring harness is sitting at a clamp type clip here. Get that out. And then I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's another one right up here. Bring the camera all the way around. Right there, so we're going to take it off of that one too. So now we've gotten this loosened up some more. Now it's also held by yet another clip here with the the mirror again. You guys can see that white band. That's another one we won't be able to get off until we can lift up on the intake manifold and come at it from behind. All right, so those two are going to have to wait. This is disconnected. Now the last thing I've got that we can get to here is this electrical connector. Sorry about the light, guys. It's really a lot of shadows, but there we go. So we got to get this electrical connector off. So this guy has got this little metal retaining type clip that we got to get off of here. Trying to see. This one's a little bit different than the fuel injector connectors. I'm trying to see exactly how this one works. I don't know if it's a squeeze type or we have to actually remove it. Need to get in here with my right hand. I'm going to try doing a squeeze on this, and you can see if I squeeze down on it, it looks like it's letting this up. I don't know if that's enough. We'll try that. Let me see if I give it a squeeze, and if that makes it happy, yep, that's what it is. All right. Let's see if there's anything else we need to disconnect over here. This harness stuff is all disconnected. This is disconnected. It's disconnected. We still have to get it off that back clip, but we can't reach it yet. All right, so at this point, I think what we'll do is we'll very gently move this PCV hose out of the way, and we're going to go after the fuel line. So you can see there's a little plastic tether here, and there's a safety clip holding these two together. This guy, I'm just going to kind of edge off like that. Get him out of the way. All right, so to get this quick connect off, we have to have a special tool. There's a couple of different designs for that special tool. It's a 3/8 size. I've got two different Lyle types. I'm going to try this one first. And what we're using a special tool for is getting it on the line, and then there are some retainers inside that we've got to depress in order to get this off. And even though we let the pressure off, there may be, or I should say there probably definitely will be, some residual fuel in this line. So we're going to get some rags down here to deal with that. And what I'm going to try to do is give this guy a squeeze and push down, and then push this in, just like that. Push down, push this in. And that should release this. We did it right. Yeah, come on. You got to get it just right. This has got to be fully seated on that thing. Actually, why I don't have enough leverage? My bad, guys. We need to release this clip here so I can get some more leverage. Let's see. This looks like we release it from this side. Come on. There we go. And then get this hose to come off of here. And now we can lift up on it. At least I think that was what was in our way. Let's see. There we go. Just a little bit of fuel. And we won't need this tool to put it back on, so we can take it off. So what you can see is there's a ridge on this nipple on the fuel rail. And inside here, if we grab a small mirror, and we give you a little bit of light, you can see there's some little nubs on the side that grab onto that ridge. And this tool, this little plastic tool we were using, pushes those in so that you can get it past that ridge. That's all it does. All right. So at this point, I think we're ready to go after the bolts, so the screws. Let me get set up for that, and we'll pull those 6 out. Guys, this is the other type of Lyle quick release, and 3/8 is the blue one. I'll put links to both the one I used as well as this one, whichever one you prefer, in the description of the video. All right, we're going to need an E10 socket to get these. We're going to start with these on the passenger side since I'm right here. Got to get it right on the head there. go. There's that one. And then the outer one is right here. All right, I'm going to switch the camera view, and I'm going to get the 3 on the driver's side. All right, last 3. We'll start with this outer one. And we'll get this guy. Whoops. Can't really see it to know if we got it seated. There we go. All right. If you guys are wondering why am I going slow, it's because the camera's in the way and I can't really see. All right, this is the one that holds the little ground wire. All right, all of these are out. Going to go get a magnet and fish them out, and then we'll try to break the seal on the gasket. All right, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll get the 3 on the other side. All right, just a quick shot of these bolts, guys. I think these are supposed to be captive on this particular model's intake. 5 came out, and 1 wants to stay in there, and I think what we're seeing here is just where it has aged out. This is normally what would kind of hold these bolts in the intake. So we'll just leave number 6 in there until we get it out. All right, guys, we've done some securing of things to get out of the way off camera. Got a very soft bungee on the electrical harness to kind of pull it back this way. There's probably going to be some residual fuel in the fuel rail, so we got a little plastic cover on that. Same on the main line that we took off. We very gently zip tied off this vacuum line, and then we have another bungee just very gently keeping all of this off. We took this PVC pipe and removed it from the clip here and here so that there's no stress on it because we don't want it to break. We've got a zip tie to getting this this vacuum line out of the way. And then we've done a couple of zip ties to get our charge air hose out of the way. And again, very gingerly, very gently. So now we're ready to try and break the seal on the gasket. So I'm going to come on this side where the throttle body attaches. And I'm just going to try to start whittling this guy to see if I can do that. With the 6 bolts out, she should let go. There she goes. There we go. All right, so now we've gotten it disconnected from the cylinder head. Now I'm going to have to shift to the other side. I'm going to flip this guy over and get the last few things that are still attaching it. All right, first thing we got to get out here as I maneuver this. Got a little vacuum hard line that's retained on this clip. Just to take some stress off of it, we want to get it off that clip. And then if we can get the light just right, you guys can see we've got to get this disconnected from where it goes into the intake manifold where my finger is, right down here. There is a little band clamp that we've got to release, and then we got to get that hose off. You guys able to see this? Let's see if we can find a better shot for the camera, and then we'll take this off. All right, so let's zoom in here. That guy right there. I wish I could get you some better light, but I think this is as good as it's going to get. I'm going to come down with a 45-degree angle long nose pliers because the clasp for this clamp is facing down. Give her a squeeze, pull her back. All right. Then I'm going to switch to a different tool. In order to remove it. All right, bring this back up again. Going to grab this little vacuum line. We're going to give it a twist to break the adhesion. I'm going to block your view for just a second, guys. All right, now I'll come back and let you have the view, and we'll try to pull this line off. There we go. All right, so that's one. There's still a couple more things we got to disconnect down here. All right, if we zoom in here, the next thing we're going to go after is, if we kind of hold this guy up, you can see the back side of this other wiring harness clip. It's kind of like a white color right there. Let's see if I can get this without blocking your view. Same tool. I'm going to try to come in here and give this guy a squeeze from the sides so that we can push him out. And it'll be a lot easier for you because you won't have to be coming in at an angle with a camera here like I am. Yeah, come on. I don't know if I'm going to be able to film this for you guys because I cannot get a good view of both of these little tabs. Let me see if I can move around where I can get a better grip on this and you guys can still see. All right, guys. I wasn't able to show you this. Let me show you what we ended up having to do here. We had a small casualty. Pull this guy out a little bit more. So this here, when we tried to remove it, this old plastic on this clamp is so brittle it broke. So this piece is still in the intake. I'll show it to you when we get it out. This guy right under here, for the hose, this one's easy. You can see we just had to give it a squeeze. I could not get the camera down there. All right, and so the last one we've got is another clip just like this on the wiring harness right down there. But fortunately, you can see it's one of these conventional types, right? That guy right there. So I should be able to get this one on camera, and it's the same one as what was holding the hose. Apologize for the lighting. All right. So we're going to come down here and try to get this guy. Holy crap. What a pita. What a pita. Yeah, let me see if I got a smaller plier to fit in there. Yeah, now guys, I can't see with you guys there. I'm going to have to squeeze this from the other side. All right, guys, there it is. So one casualty, but everything else okay. And if we zoom out a little bit, now we can actually remove the intake. So let's go take a look at what we were after. All right, guys, here's our casualty when we were trying to get this off. All we had to do was squeeze the sides, but it was so brittle that as we twisted the intake manifold, just broke like that. Then I cut it to get it off. I'll put down in the description and I'll leave a comment. I'm sure I can find a suitable aftermarket clip to look like this and suit this place. GM doesn't service this. It's part of the wiring harness. All right, I snapped this little clip on here. It's another one where you just squeeze it here and here, squeeze it in, and then lift it up on the edge. It holds the line to the evap canister solenoid here, and it also holds the fuel line. You have to take this off to get it out. I put it back on just to show you what the complete unit would normally look like. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take these 5mm Allen head bolts that are holding the throttle body to the intake off. And why are we doing this? Well, it's the only way we're going to be able to see the other side of that bypass valve, and it's the only way we're going to be able to clean both sides of it if that's the problem. So far, we've only had a loss of one retaining kind of push pin zip tie. That's pretty good. This is the original intake manifold from 2012 on this engine. The owner says they've never had anything serviced like this, so they're original owners, so they should know. So it's amazing that it got this far. Normally those bypass valves go out a lot sooner. And we will soon find out if we're just cleaning this and putting it back in or we're replacing it. Alright, so with those screws off. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to snake the camera back in and look at the other side of that bypass. All right, guys, with that throttle body off and out of the way, we got our camera again. The first thing, we're going to take another look at that bypass valve from the port that it's in here. So if I come in here and then we look down at the camera, we kind of go back all the way down. You can see there she is. This is a better view than the side camera. If I can just get this oriented right. There we go. Alright, so there we can see this guy's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 holes. We can't see the orange through any of them. And that's why we're passing this light dead on. But we can see there's something behind the holes. It's not like they're completely gone. I mean, that they're completely straight through. So I think this valve is still there, but it's all crudded up. So let's pull this out and let's switch it to the side view camera. And now let's come in from the throttle body hole here, right? And then we'll go back down and look at the camera here, and I'll try to get a view of the other side. All right, so right here, this is, there's a lot of people don't realize there's 2 valves inside this intake manifold. Here's the first one we're trying to get a look at right here, so we can still see a little bit of the orange on this. Hopefully that's coming out for you guys without any glare. And we can see the flap of the bypass valve. It's just like a big flat piece of silicone. So it's still there, but it's very crudded up with carbon deposits. Now the other valve is directly on the other side over here. So if I can get a view of that for you. Yeah, come on. It's right here. Right, so if you just watch here, I'll try to get it where the light from the camera isn't flooding it out. Let me try something different. Let me try to come in from one of the intake runners instead. So just come in through this side intake runner and see if we can get a better view. All right, so that's actually another view of the other side of this valve that we're interested in. And there is the other one right there. Come on, baby. Right there. So this other valve we can see is intact and nice and clean. Right there. This guy right there. So you got 2 valves. You got one there, and then twist this around again. Right, there's the intake runner. And there's the bypass valve that we were seeing the nub on the other side. So both of these need to be there, but they both should look like this. This one's obviously still clean. This one's all crudded up. This is the one that we can see when we take the PCV pipe off. So what do? Do we clean this or replace it? I don't think I'm going to be able to get in here and clean this. And this is the original intake manifold from 2012 on this owner's vehicle. So it's already managed to go 23 years. That's a long time. This part is normally going to fail a lot longer, assuming a lot sooner than that. So I think what I'm going to do is, between that problem that we just see there and the fact that we had these bolts are supposed to be retained, right? But only one of them is still retained because the inside pieces broke off, those seals. We're seeing that our ground line's getting all corroded. That really should be replaced at some point, right? The number of reasons to replace this is mounting up, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace it. So what do we do to replace this? Well, we would need to take parts off. We need to remove this, we need to remove this, we need to remove the fuel rail, and we need to remove this bracket. The new one would come with the gasket for the cylinder head and a gasket for the throttle body. It would come with a new ground strap for the fuel rail. But we will need to remove this guy from this nut here, and it will come with this new turbo solenoid here, and it will come with this hosing. So we just need to remove these top parts. Let's get some tools and do that. All right, first thing we're going to take off is this sensor here, and we're going to do that with a T20 Torx bit. And this will be something that we transfer to the new intake manifold. Just wiggle this guy off. We're going to be nice and gentle with him. I'll show you why in just a second. Come on. This is the other reason why I'm replacing this. Everything is like old and brittle. There we go. All right, so what I wanted to make sure of was that this O-ring here didn't get damaged, because GM does not service this O-ring. If this is damaged, they want you to replace the whole sensor, because their feeling is if the O-ring's damaged, then the whole sensor is probably going to be going next. We got it off intact, so that's great. One less thing. So far, our damage report is only that one clip on the harness. All right, so now we're going to go after this evap solenoid. You can see there's these little nubs here. We're going to grab that and squeeze it. Try to get this to let go. Come on. The thing is, everything, you got to be patient and you got to be gentle, because everything's plastic. All right. I'm just trying to see if I can. Well, it's a good thing we are replacing it, because we just broke a piece of plastic off of it. I'm trying to see if the back end of this will come off, give me some more leverage. Doesn't look like it, so we're just going to be forced to keep dealing with this. So we squeeze this. It's supposed to let go of little clips inside, but I think what it is it's jammed on the inside with the seal. I hate old plastic. There we go. I just had to give it a little bit of a pry up while squeezing it. As you squeeze this, it's going to let go of this little ridge here, but then it needs to have some force to have it let go of this edge. And the other piece of it is just on like a rubber grommet. Just going to wiggle that off. Just like that. All right, so now we've managed to get another part off without it breaking. All right, the last two things we need off of here. We're going to take this off again. Give him a squeeze. Get him up and off. That's off. And now we've got a 10 millimeter nut for this ground wire. And then we've got two T30s for the fuel rail. When we're putting this pressure on this, we want to make sure that the nozzles are not pressing into the ground so they don't get damaged. We're also on this cardboard to help with that problem as well. All right, so with this loosened up, now we just got to gingerly get these guys to come off. So I'm just going to grab the rail and use my thumb to press up on this end until I feel like it's moving. Yep, and the same thing with this one. And then we'll flip it over and we'll get the last one. All right. So similar to the sensor, the air sensor that we took off, clean some of this crud here. We're inspecting the seal because, again, GM will not service these fuel injector seals. If they're damaged, they want you to replace the whole injector. All right, so we'll take some cleaner and clean all of this carbon buildup off of there, but otherwise this is ready to install on the new one. Just going to keep it like this because we got some wind out here. I don't want any debris to blow. At that point, we are done with this. We'd leave this on there because the new one will have it, and we can leave the gasket here and here. Let me show you the new parts. All right, if you end up reusing this because both of those valves were orange, I wanted to give you the part numbers because you absolutely have to replace the gaskets. So the intake manifold to cylinder head gasket, that's going to be a GM 55, 56, 66, 64. It's going to come in this big paper container. I'm not sure why, but that's how they come. And this throttle body to intake manifold gasket, this little round guy here, that's going to be a GM 55, 56, 66, 65, or an AC Delco 219, 619. Like all these parts, I'll put links in the description below. The other thing I'd tell you about reusing this, if it's an OEM intake manifold and it's less than 5 years old, I think it's fine to reuse it if you found that there was nothing wrong with those two valves. If it's older than that, like in the case of this one, I would suggest replacing it because it's a high failure part. If it's aftermarket, I don't care how young it is, get rid of it and get an OEM one on there. All right, let's keep going. All right, let's take a look at the new one. When I opened this and this GM tape, it ripped off the part number sticker, but you can still make it out over here on the shipping sticker. It's a GM 28289977. That's the current number for this intake manifold. They've gone through a bunch of revisions over the years, trying to improve them. All right, so that's what this new one looks like. So it'll include these two vacuum hoses. It'll include this solenoid, and then there's a cap here where our hose from the PCV pipe is going to plug in. There's a cap here, there's a cap here, and then all of these bolts are captive the way they're supposed to be, and there is a new ground line, and the gaskets are already installed. So that's how the GM one will come. Now before we can transfer those parts, I've got to clean them up, and I'm going to do that off camera, but I'm going to show you with the camera, just like we showed on the used one, what are these valves supposed to look like? This guy keeps shutting off on me. All right, let's take the front-facing camera first, and let's go down through this port. And if we see right here on the camera, that's what this valve is supposed to look like. Right? So we can see there's a lot of glare because the plastic is shiny, being brand new instead of being all covered with carbon. But you see, we can see orange through all of those holes. Nice and clean, not clogged up, not mucked up. Now let's look at it from the other side. So we'll change the side view camera, and just like before, we'll come in through one of these intake runners, Let's go through this one here. And then if we look down at the camera, right, so here is the next intake runner. Here's the center section with that hump where the pipe pulls in. There's the other intake runner. There's the secondary valve. And here's the bypass valve, right? Come on. Right there. All right, so again, we got a lot of glare from the LED on the camera, but that's the way it's supposed to look. All these valves should look nice and orange. And on the other one, only one of them was, which is this secondary valve that's up here near the top. If I can twist this again and catch a view of it. It's so hard to get this camera. This particular model, this is a long, hard, solid piece. It only bends about 2.5 inches away from the lens. So it can sometimes be hard when you're trying to get something of this nature into the clip. I don't know if I'm going to be able to angle it the right way or not. I think you guys know what I'm talking about already, though, because you saw it before. There it is. There's that other valve. Right, let's see if we can get a view of both of them. Yep, there you go. So there's the bypass valve, and then there's the other valve. And they've both got to be present. So it's not enough to just check the nub from the outside, although you should always do that because that's something you can look at. But you can still have this one there and this one be gone. All right, so now we're done with this. I'm going to clean up all those parts, and I'm going to reassemble this piece. Let me go show you something on the engine, and let's do some cleaning there too, and then we'll come back after it's all cleaned up. All right, so on the cylinder head side, we need to clean all this up. So I've pushed some paper towels into these intake ports so that no crap falls in there. You can see on the port that sits where the bypass valve is, you can look at all this carbon. Let's take some of that off right there, right? Just gobs and gobs of carbon. And that's all over that valve. So we got to clean all this up before we can reinstall the new one as well. All right, real quick peek of the installation procedure for the intake manifold. Right, they talk about needing to clean the sealing surfaces, which I mentioned. They talk about making sure you use a new intake manifold gasket. They give you some torque values for the 6 E10s of 15 foot-pounds. I'll give you the torque values for all the others that are involved as well. They talk about reconnecting the fuel line, the clip, the PCV pipe to the intake manifold. There's just a view of the fuel line and the retainer, the fuel feed pipe to the fuel rail, and the clip. Brake booster vacuum, re-putting the dust cap cover on the fuel rail pressure valve, connecting the wastegate regulator solenoid wiring harness, the clip in the control module wiring harness, the clips for these front wiring harnesses, the 4 fuel injector wiring harnesses. There's either a map sensor by itself, like this engine, or older ones you'll have a map sensor and a barometric pressure sensor. So there's 2 here. The one on the left is the barometric pressure sensor, but that got eliminated in later years. Ours only has the map sensor. But if you got them both, you're going to plug them both in. Purge solenoid, throttle body wiring harness, and of course the charge air pipe back to the throttle body. Heater outlet clip in the back. Wiring harness, the 2 clips, including the one that we had that broke. You put the sight shield back on, reconnect the negative battery terminal, close the hood, and you're ready to do a test. There's also a section about that rebuilding process, cleaning and inspection, and moving all these parts from the old one to the new one that I showed you as well. Here's your torque value on the injection rail boats, those T30s, 71 inch-pounds. Again, new gasket on the intake manifold. And that's it. That's just a one-pager. All right, guys, we got everything cleaned up. Let's start putting the intake manifold back together. All right, so I'm going to sit it right like this. I think we'll do it in the order we took it out, actually. So we'll move this little wiring harness guy out of the way. All right, so you can see we cleaned off our fuel injector tips. What I used to clean these with, I used the same throttle body and air intake cleaner from CRC, and then I just got a whole bunch of these long reach Q-tips. I use that to clean these as well as cleaning the throttle body. So what I'm going to do first to ease the stress on these old seals Didn't want that much. Just going to grease up these seals so they will go in without getting caught up, so we don't get them tearing. You could also lubricate them with clean fuel. I'm just using clean 5W30 motor oil here. All right. Still got fuel dripping out of this in some places. All right, guys. Sorry about that. I had to stop because it's still fuel leaking out of here, and then it ended up getting all over my hands, but it also washed off some of our oil. So yeah, I know I said that you could probably use fuel as a lubricant, but I prefer to have the oil. All right, let's try this again. All right, so I just want to snip this guy in. And then we got our two T30s. Start by hand. I'll go over the torque values and all this stuff in a bit. Right now I'm just trying to get it all rough assembled. We can torque it all down as part of the final assembly process. Alright, and then we can find that 10mm nut for the ground wire. And this guy's got a little clip on the bottom. It tells you it's got to be under the rail. Okay, there's that. Next up, we'll do this sensor. So when we cleaned this sensor, we took care to, I'm just going to put some oil on this seal as well. We took a carbide scraper and we got the corrosion off this metal insert because we don't want that to cause it to lift up as we're installing it. All right. And then we should have that little screw here. That's a T20. Oops. This particular fastener has got a lot of surface corrosion on it, but as long as it's not stripped, it's reusable. All right. Next, we'll put this purge solenoid valve back in. So we'll run that rubber grommet in here, and then same as we've been doing, we'll put a little bit of clean oil on this guy, snap him in, so that's done. And we'll take this bracket, re-snap that on this shelf here, and then we'll remount the throttle body. Now, in the throttle body, we took care to clean all along the butterfly valve, both on this side and on this side. And then we used a carbide scraper to very carefully remove the aluminum oxide that was building up here so that we got a nice, good seal against our gasket. When you do this, you want to take care not to force the valve because it is motor controlled, so you don't want to force it open. And again, what I use to clean that is I use these kind of long reach Q-tips with the throttle body cleaner that we talked about earlier. And we're going to tighten this guy up with this 5mm Allen head. And once we get this tightened up, again, I'll go over these torque values separately. And we'll torque it up after we get it back on the vehicle. I like to do these catty corner so they sit evenly. Just gonna get that guy going a little bit. And we'll get this guy going. then we'll finish this one. Okay, and we'll torque this up later, like I said. All right, so at this point, last check to make sure all of our fuel injectors are debris-free. There's a little bit of crud there. And if you can't remember if you have the gasket here, there's a little green nub showing through to remind you that you have the gasket installed. You'll have the same little nubs here and here. All right, this guy's ready to torque down and reinstall. All right, guys, you can see we've got this all cleaned up. Just used a carbide scraper along with some brake clean on a rag. That should be good enough for this. Compressed air inside all 6 of the bolt ports to make sure there's nothing going to be in there binding up the bolts. And then this alignment tab down here, we blew that out as well just to make sure there's no crud in there. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and reassemble it. I'm not going to film reassembling it because it's just the reverse of what we did for disassembly, but I'll take you through the torque values as we go. All right, so we want to push these bolts in so they're flush against these metal inserts that they have. Again, double checking that our gasket's here. This is that dowel that I was telling you about that goes on the far end that we blew the dirt out of. So at this point, we're ready to place it back in. As we put it back in, like I said, I'm not going to try to film all of this. On the back here, as we put it back in, this is where we're going to put the normal wiring harness clip. This is where we're going to put the heater hose clip. And this is the clip that broke off on us. I'll see if I can come up with a solution to replace that. And then we'll be able to put the 6 bolts in. All right, guys, another casualty. This one's my fault. I was just reaching down. We got those 2 wiring harnesses, and the one wiring harness and the one cooling pipe clip piped in just nice. And our little brittle pipe got stuck behind this bracket, and I didn't notice it. And boom, snapped right off, just like I was telling you. So, you know, it can even happen to those of us that are experienced and understand about it. So I'm going to end up having to replace this, but I'm not going to add any more time to this video. It's probably worth doing a quick little short video, and I'll put something together for how you replace this pipe and stick it up in the upper right-hand corner. All right, guys, everything's buttoned up. We can put the negative battery terminal cable back on and torque this 10 millimeter to 40 inch-pounds. All right, guys, we're all done. We've got our new camshaft cover installed that replaced the problem with the diaphragm. And again, I'll link that video up in the upper right. As far as the intake manifold goes, we've got our PCV pipe reinstalled, resecured, clamped, and secured. A little bit of oil on the nipple before you put it on and make sure the O-ring's there. We've got our fuel line back in the clamp. We've got it hooked and retained. Evap canister solenoid valve, pipe installed, clipped, and electrical connection, map sensor electrical connection. There's no torque value on this T20. Just make it nice and snug. We've snapped in this power brake booster vacuum line here as well. We've got all 4 of the fuel injector electrical connections, and we've got 71 inch-pounds on the 2 T30s that are retaining the fuel rail to the intake manifold. Dust caps reinstalled. 10 millimeter ground strap bolt. There's no specified torque value. Just make it snug. Don't go crazy with it. On this side, we've got the electrical wiring harness reconnected to the wastegate solenoid, and we've reconnected the small vacuum line elbow, and we've got the harness back in its different retainers. We've got the cooling heater hose line clip pushed back in, and the retainer that's holding the other wiring harness. We still have that one that broke, I'll come back to in a minute. We've got our throttle body on, those 4 5 millimeter Allens, 71 inch-pounds. You're going to want to do that torque before you mount it because this bracket is going to be in the way for being able to torque this one in the upper area. And then you got the charge air hose reconnected, electrical connection reconnected, the band clamp on the hose, no specified torque value, just make it snug. And this connection is reinstalled. At this point, everything's hooked back up in its home. Sight shield's back installed. We're ready to go ahead and give it a test. If you found this video useful in saving you money and doing it yourself, I'm quite confident, by the way, that this is going to correct that P0171 because we already verified it was a busted PCV orifice diaphragm on this cover. And I suspect very strongly that what I showed you earlier with the gummed up bypass valve, that's what was leading to this problem. We'll go ahead and give it back to the owner, though, to verify. Since it was intermittent, this is our best shot on an intermittent code when we have one known confirmed problem. But anyway, again, big job. Saves you a lot of labor doing it yourself. If you've got questions or comments, leave them below. I'll try to help. And as always, thanks for watching.